Hey, welcome. Today we're going to talk about the circular economy, but not as some buzzword or an environmental checkbox. No, we're diving into how it's a fundamental rewiring of how business actually gets done. We're going to walk through a really practical path for transforming a company from that old linear model to a circular one. And it all starts with one big shift in how you see things. So let's start with this question. Just think about it for a second. The entire idea we're exploring today, it all pivots on this one single powerful mind shift. It's about stop seeing waste as a cost, something to manage and get rid of, and start seeing it as an asset, just packed with untapped value. This isn't about being forced to do something. It's about seizing a strategic advantage. And this really frames the two main operating systems for business. On the left, you've got the linear economy. It's been the default for centuries, right? Take, make, and then waste. Super simple, but incredibly wasteful. On the right, that's the circular economy. Think of it as a major upgrade, a system that's designed from the get-go to get rid of waste, to keep materials in the game, and to actually regenerate the natural systems we all depend on. Now, let's be super clear. This is about so much more than just recycling. The real goal here is to redefine how we create value in the first place. And that starts with having a really clear definition of what we're even talking about. So to make sure we're all on the same page, we're using the gold standard definition from the Ellen MacArthur Foundation. This is our North Star, a system that is intentionally restorative and regenerative by design. And that's the key phrase, by design. It means waste isn't just some accident, it's a design flaw. And this whole framework is about fixing that flaw. Okay, so why would a company actually do this? Well, the business case is really solid. It's built on 4 powerful value drivers that can unlock all new kinds of revenue and make a business way more resilient. And this slide lays them out perfectly. First, you've got the inner circle. Basically, you save the most value by doing the least to a product. Think simple maintenance or repair. Second, circling longer. Pretty straightforward. Extend a product's life through reuse, refurbishment, that kind of thing. Third, cascaded use. This is where you turn old materials into high-quality new stuff for totally different industries. And finally, pure circles, keeping materials clean and uncontaminated so they can be used over and over and over again without losing quality. All right, so we get the what and the why. Now let's get to the how. Research from over 1,000 practitioners has laid out this super clear 3-stage pathway that successful companies follow to make this whole transition a reality. So let's walk through it. The whole journey really breaks down into these 3 distinct phases. You've got identification, which is where you find your opportunities, then initiation, where you test them out, and finally, implementation, where you scale them up so they become a core part of your business. So let's kick things off with identification. This is the exploration phase. You can think of it like putting on a brand new pair of glasses and scanning your entire operation, just looking for every single spot where value is literally being thrown in the trash. But it's not always a walk in the park. As this quote from the Swiss railway operator SBB shows, the first roadblock is often internal. The existing linear way of thinking can create a lot of resistance from departments that are worried about costs, like upfront operational expenses or OPEX, and, just messing with processes that have worked for years. So, to get past that resistance, you need data. You need proof. This is where tools like value leakage analysis and value stream mapping are your best friends. Now, these aren't brand new tools, but here they're used with a totally new lens to systematically find and actually quantify the low-hanging fruit and build an initial business case that shows just how big the prize could be. All right, moving on to stage 2, initiation. So, once you've found a really promising opportunity, this is where you make it real. This whole stage is about piloting, testing, and building a solid proof of concept. And what's so critical here, as this quote from Rico shows, is that this isn't just some technical pilot. It's a strategic one. They didn't just test whether they could refurbish printers. They went all in and invested in a whole new brand. They called it the Green Line, to actually create market value for those refurbished products. They aligned the whole business model with the operational change. It's brilliant. So the key things you do in this phase are launching pilots with support from the top, simulating the business model to see how the numbers really shake out, and that includes looking at potential self-cannibalization and working with partners to create solutions together. It's all about building confidence and getting ready to scale. Which brings us right to the final stage, implementation. This is where a successful pilot graduates from being a special project to being a core part of the business strategy. This is where you go from experiment to enterprise. And Philips is just a fantastic example of this. They got it. They understood that circular principles couldn't just be a side hustle. They had to be baked right into their core strategy, with really clear key performance indicators, or KPIs, to track their progress and steer the entire organization.
Because when you scale up, you need real infrastructure. This means creating dedicated circular economy teams, setting hard KPIs like revenue targets from circular products, and, this is a big one, developing the IT and processes to handle all the tricky reverse logistics. It's about making circularity a fully supported, standard way of doing business.
But this whole journey has a really critical challenge, one that researchers call the paradox of progress. It's basically the friction that happens when the new circular way of thinking clashes head-on with the established linear way of doing business. And this slide just shows that tension perfectly. On one hand, you have the linear logic. It's all driven by short-term KPIs and the need to just sell more units. On the other hand, you have circular logic, which is focused on long-term value and service models. The old way loves tiny, incremental improvements. The new way demands huge, systemic innovation. And successfully managing this paradox, that's the mark of a true transformation.
Okay, so let's pull all of this together. Here is a final, actionable framework for how you can actually start building your circular future.
This framework is basically your roadmap. In the identification stage, you're using tools like life cycle assessment, or LCA, and value mapping. When you get to initiation, you're moving on to things like business model simulation and co-creation. And then in implementation, you're developing those circular KPIs and building dedicated teams. The point is, there are practical tools for every single step of the journey. And if you ever doubt for a second whether this is a real scalable business strategy, just look at this number. Philips has set a target to generate 25%, a quarter, of its total revenue from circular products and services. This is not some niche experiment. It's a core driver of future growth for one of the biggest companies in the world. So the bottom line is this transformation is absolutely possible, and it follows a proven path. Which leaves us with one last question for you to think about. Looking at your own work, your own company, your own industry, what's the first value leak you could plug to start your journey? Thanks so much for tuning in.